Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering something strange. The money in your bank account did not come from a vault. It was not printed. It was not sitting somewhere, waiting for someone to earn it. A large portion of it was created with a few computer entries. No gold was moved. No physical object changed hands. A number appeared on a screen, and suddenly it became real. That sounds impossible, almost like a magic trick. But this is not a conspiracy. It is how modern money works. Every day, banks create new money through lending. Governments create money through monetary systems. Central banks influence the supply of money flowing through entire economies. And this hidden process affects almost everything you experience. The price of your house, the cost of your groceries, the interest rate on your loan, the value of your savings, the future purchasing power of your salary. Most people spend their entire lives using money without ever asking the most basic question. Where does money actually come from? Because the answer is much stranger than most people imagine. For thousands of years, money was something physical, coins made from valuable metals, pieces of paper backed by governments, something you could hold, something that represented scarcity. But modern money is different. Today, most money is not created by printing machines. It is created through promises. A promise that someone will repay. A promise that a financial system will continue working. A promise that a number on a screen is worth something because millions of people agree that it is. And that agreement is the foundation of the modern economy. But it creates a fascinating question. If banks can create money by lending it, then who controls how much money exists? And what happens when too much money enters the system? To understand that, we have to go back. Because the story of money creation is really the story of how civilization changed its definition of value. For most of human history, people traded directly. A farmer with wheat needed tools. A blacksmith needed food. But direct exchange had a problem. What if the blacksmith did not need wheat? What if he needed clothes? The system became complicated. So, societies created something everyone could accept. Money. At first, money was usually something scarce. Shells, silver, gold. The reason these objects worked was simple. They were difficult to create. You could not wake up one morning and suddenly produce 10 tons of gold. Scarcity gave them value. But eventually, carrying large amounts of precious metals became inconvenient. So people started using paper claims, a piece of paper that represented gold stored somewhere else, a receipt, a promise. At first, every paper note had a direct connection to physical gold. If you had a banknote, theoretically, you could exchange it for actual gold, but that system had limits. Governments could only create as much money as the gold reserves allowed. Then came a major turning point. In 1971, the United States ended the direct convertibility of dollars into gold. The dollar became what economists call fiat money. Money backed not by a physical commodity, but by trust. Trust in the government. Trust in institutions. Trust that other people would continue accepting it. This changed everything. Money was no longer limited by the amount of gold underground. The system became more flexible. But flexibility came with a new responsibility. Because if money was no longer connected to something physical, someone had to control its creation. That responsibility belongs largely to central banks. Institutions like the Federal Reserve in the United States. Their job is to influence the economy by controlling interest rates and managing the money supply. But here is where things become interesting. Many people imagine money creation as a government printing billions of dollars and dropping it into the economy. Sometimes governments do create physical currency, but physical cash is only a tiny part of modern money. The majority exists digitally, numbers stored in banking systems, and commercial banks play the biggest role in creating it. Here is a simple example. Imagine you walk into a bank and apply for a $100,000 mortgage. Many people assume the bank takes $100,000 from another customer's savings account and gives it to you. That is not exactly what happens. When the bank approves the loan, it creates a new deposit in your account. A new balance appears. You now have $100,000. The bank now has an asset, your promise to repay. And a new amount of money has entered the economy. The money did not move from one place to another. It was created. A debt created new money. This is one of the strangest features of modern finance. Money and debt are deeply connected. When someone borrows, new money is created. When loans are repaid, that money effectively disappears from circulation. The system expands and contracts depending on borrowing. Think about that. A mortgage is not just a way for someone to buy a house. It is also a mechanism that creates money. A business loan is not just funding for expansion. It is also the creation of new purchasing power. Credit is not simply a tool inside the monetary system. Credit is one of the engines that creates the money supply itself. But this creates a difficult question. If creating money is so easy, why not create unlimited amounts? Why not make everyone rich? Why not erase poverty by adding more zeros to bank accounts? Because money only works when it represents something real. Imagine every person received $10 million tomorrow. At first, everyone would feel wealthy, but soon, the number of dollars would increase while the amount of goods and services would not. More money would chase the same number of houses, the same food, the same energy, the same resources. Prices would rise. The money would lose purchasing power. This is inflation, not simply prices going up. Inflation is what happens when the relationship between money and real economic output changes. The difficult part is that inflation often arrives quietly, a small increase every year, a few percent here, a few percent there, but over decades the effect compounds. A dollar today does not buy what a dollar bought 50 years ago. The numbers get larger, the purchasing power gets smaller, and this is where the system becomes controversial. Because the same mechanism that allows economies to grow can also create instability. When banks create more loans, economies can expand. Businesses invest. People buy homes. Jobs are created. But when borrowing grows too quickly, problems appear. Asset prices rise. Debt levels increase. People begin borrowing not because they are investing, but because they believe prices will continue rising forever. This is where financial bubbles are born. History has seen this pattern many times. Easy money creates excitement. Excitement creates speculation. Speculation pushes prices higher. Higher prices create even more confidence, until something breaks. The financial crisis of 2008 was a dramatic example. For years, banks created enormous amounts of credit connected to housing. People borrowed. Banks packaged loans into complex financial products. Investors bought them. The entire system depended on one assumption, that housing prices would continue increasing. Then reality arrived. When borrowers struggled to repay, the entire chain began collapsing. A system built on expanding credit suddenly faced the consequences of too much credit. Governments responded by creating even more liquidity to prevent a deeper collapse, which created a strange situation. A crisis caused by too much debt was treated by adding more financial support. Sometimes the medicine and the disease come from the same bottle. But this does not mean money creation is automatically bad. Modern economies could not function without flexible money systems. Businesses need credit. People need loans. Innovation often requires investment before profits exist. The question is not whether money should be created. The question is, how much? Who receives it? And what happens after it enters the system? Because money does not enter the economy equally. When new money is created through lending, it usually reaches certain places first: banks, businesses, asset markets, investors. By the time it spreads throughout the economy, prices may already have changed. This creates another uncomfortable reality. The first people to receive new money often have advantages over those who receive it later, not because of intelligence, not because of effort, but because of position inside the financial system. This is one reason why debates about money creation become so political. It is not only about economics, it is about distribution. Who benefits, who absorbs the costs, and who gets left trying to understand a system that was never explained to them. Most people are taught how to earn money. Very few are taught how money itself is created. They learn to save. They learn to work. They learn to spend carefully. But behind all of that is a much larger machine operating quietly, a machine powered by confidence, debt, and belief. The modern financial system is one of humanity's greatest inventions. It allows economies to grow at incredible speed. It allows ideas to become companies. It allows people to buy homes before they have decades of savings. But every invention has a trade-off. A system built on creating money through debt requires constant balance. Too little money and economies can freeze. Too much money and confidence can collapse. The entire structure depends on something invisible: trust. The trust that money will keep its meaning. The trust that debts will be repaid. The trust that tomorrow's economy will be strong enough to support today's promises. And maybe that is the strangest part of all. Modern money is not valuable because it is rare. It is valuable because billions of people collectively agree that it is. A number on a screen becomes a paycheck. A loan becomes a house. A promise becomes purchasing power. A belief becomes an entire financial system. But as the amount of money created continues to grow, one question remains. Are we controlling the system, or has the system created rules that we are simply trying to keep up with?